Hello everybody, this is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and the Koreans are on it now. There is a volunteer group, a grassroots group, that is trying to bring together North and South Korea under the framework of a neutral peninsula. That is something that I've been talking about with colleagues from Europe for a while. There is a more than 100-year history of thinkers trying to solve the Korean conundrum and the security situation around Korea through neutrality. This is the latest version of one of those ideas. They put together a video and I want to share the video with you. Please have a look at how Korean grassroots organization is portraying this idea. Please enjoy.
Peace on the Korean peninsula takes a lot of hard work to maintain. Currently, the two Koreas are caught in the confrontation between the two world powers. The Korean peninsula has had a turbulent history. China, Russia, and Japan surround the peninsula, leading to ongoing foreign aggression and frequent civil wars. Amid that painful history, the country was divided in 1945, and the Korean War erupted in 1950. The conflict between the North and the South is currently at its peak. Neutralizing the Korean peninsula is the recommended solution to this problem. Neutralizing the Korean peninsula is about international diplomacy through treaties between the North and the South and the surrounding great powers. If the four powers negotiate and announce the neutrality of the Korean peninsula, North and South Korea will have the authority and the obligation as neutral countries. After neutralizing, the problems on the Korean peninsula will have to be solved by the North and the South together. This includes the issue of reunification. Becoming a neutral country means it has chosen its path to stability and peace from what it has passively endured. The Korean peninsula will be recognized as neutral if the major powers decide to create a buffer zone for their interests. Neutralization requires the following conditions. Firstly, it is situated geopolitically in a buffer zone between the great powers. Armed neutrality is maintained for a robust national defense. Neutralization is a national priority, and the state is in charge of the policies and institutions of the neutral state. The interests of the neighboring powers coincide to arrive at an agreement. What are the benefits of neutralization? Being a neutral country gives you the international assurance that you will not be part of the war. The country will reduce its armaments, use the saved military funds for the welfare of its people, and attract a lot of foreign capital to the country. Neutrality contributes to the peace and stability of the country and permits an uninterrupted development. Neutral Switzerland has not seen war for more than 200 years. It has become a wealthy country with a well-rounded social welfare society. Additionally, neutrality offers the people a new identity and values as the citizens of a neutral country. It is something to be proud of, and it provides them with a deep sense of cohesion and a higher level of social consciousness. What does permanent neutrality mean? Agreements between the parties concerned guarantee that a state that is surrounded by great powers will remain permanently neutral. It is guaranteed to maintain its independence and territorial integrity under international law by not engaging in a war or military alliances at all times. Permanent neutrals are obliged not to engage in military alliances in wartime and fulfill the role of a neutral nation in peacetime. Preserving neutrality in both war and peace is the goal of permanent neutrality. They serve as a mediator for countries threatened by superpowers invasions and send a message of neutrality to the global community. A permanently neutral country sets neutrality as its country's absolute criterion. Citizens solve all conflict situations they encounter according to the values of neutrality prescribed by law. The above countries are internationally recognized permanently neutral countries. The Korean Peninsula has a 100-year history of neutralization debates because of its geopolitical situation. After the 19th century, as Joseon became internationally known, the possibility of neutralizing the country began to arise between Joseon and the surrounding powers. In 1885, Baudelaire, the German vice consul, proposed to the Joseon government that Korea should be made a permanently neutral state like Switzerland. That same year, Yoo Il-jun promulgated the theory of neutrality, which called for the neutralization of Joseon under the assurances of the great powers. In 1904, Emperor Gojong declared permanent neutrality unilaterally. When he saw the partition of Qing dynasty in 1900, he had a premonition that the peninsula could be divided, so he insisted on neutralizing it. But it was derailed by a backlash of Japan, the United States, and Russia. Kim Yong-jung, who studied at Harvard, USC, and Columbia University, campaigned for independence of Korea and proposed a neutralized reunification plan. Hwang In-kwon, who went to the US in 1954 to study, wrote a thesis entitled A Study on Neutralization of the Korean Peninsula and many other related papers. In 1960, Kim Sam-gyu proposed a reunification plan, saying that since the country's division was carried out by the interest of the four great powers, reunification should also conform to their interests. In 1961, the military government in Korea controlled the neutralization and reunification movement. However, it has continued overseas, gradually gained momentum in Korea since 2001, and is active. The division of the Korean Peninsula was caused by the clash of hegemony between the United States and Russia for their own interest on the Korean Peninsula. After that, the North and the South became hostile to each other. 70 years later, the South Korean people's desire and imagination to improve inter-Korean relations are dormant because of division, war, and the constant clash of ideologies amongst themselves. The only way to restore peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula is to keep the balance between maritime and continental powers. To maintain balanced diplomacy with the surrounding powers, it is necessary to have negotiations and economic exchanges between North and South Korea. Neutralizing the Korean Peninsula is the most effective way for them to work together. An international network was formed by key neutrality activists to kickstart a dialogue between North and South, and neutrality experts from Europe agreed to support the cause. INNK stands for the International Network for the Neutral Korea. INNK is a project involving the joint efforts of individuals and groups from Korea, the US, Switzerland, and Austria who support the neutrality of Korean Peninsula. Why Switzerland? Most Koreans are aware of and have positive feelings towards Switzerland. The Swiss welfare policies have the highest public trust and satisfaction with the people, with no centrally controlled welfare plan. The federation in Switzerland has been neutral for over 200 years. Until then, Switzerland experienced constant civil wars and foreign invasions. Due to the lack of national identity, the people who spoke four languages have lived in severe conflicts. Switzerland has undergone a mammoth change since 1815 and has become what many people consider an ideal society. It is ranked 7th in the Economist Democracy Index in 2022. South Korea ranked 24. The Swiss have an advanced system of direct democracy and higher social consciousness based on consensus. The INNK delegation traveled from Seoul to Geneva, Berlin, and Vienna for special meetings with the Swiss and Austrian neutrality experts from June 15th to June 20th. As a result, Professors Laurent Guetzel and Heinz Gertner were invited to join the INNK Advisory Committee. On June 20th, Vanna Kim Hansen and Sang-woo Lim presented the vision of INNK to overcome the situation in the Korean Peninsula during a Zoom conference in Geneva. Establishment of neutral international relations. The establishment of neutral international relations is the fruit of unprecedented civilian diplomacy around the world, and it has ensured the role of INNK. In Berun on June 16, the delegation met with Dr. Lohong Wetzel.
More closeness between North Korea and South Korea. The whole entity declares itself neutral. That would be the price the US would have to pay. I mean, they would have to recognize this neutrality. If the US and China, both of them, would need to recognize it on a given situation. In theory, the best convincing situation which could lead North Korea to forego its nuclear arms.
In Vienna on June 18, they met with Professor Dr. Heinz Geltner at the IIP of the University of Vienna.
Not the only thing. If you talk about permanent neutrality, permanent means not eternity. Permanent means you're also neutral in peace times. And when you're neutral in peace times, you have to convey the message. So you have to always say, I'm neutral. And that's what basically in the Austrian neutrality law is enshrined.
On June 20, they held a Zoom conference in Geneva on enhancing the North Korean human rights issue through neutrality on the Korean Peninsula. The conference was attended by 7 Swiss peace activists, 8 members of the INNK delegation, and 30 European peace activists virtually. Vanna Kim Hansen said, exercising the right to self-determination is a task that the South Koreans should accept. Korea, sandwiched between the US and China, must exercise its right to self-determination and independence without being biased to one side. Sang-woo Lim said, there are 2 UN member countries on the Korean Peninsula. The North and the South should form the Korean Economic Community to bridge the gap between them. Heine Hanchen said, neutral Korea's membership in the international community can make it an attractive place for the world to visit. North Korea can escape isolation with the Korean Peninsula neutralized. Claude Begley said, there's no reason why the North and the South should hate each other. They need to stop the I'm right, you are wrong type of confrontation and focus on security policy on the Korean Peninsula. Superpowers surround Korea, dividing it into 2 halves and alienating them from each other. Look at the forest instead of the trees. The Koreans need to look far ahead. The Russian-Ukrainian war continues, and the China-Taiwan war may soon break out. South Korea would experience a significant economic blow if China-Taiwan explodes. Korea must have a permanent neutrality to prevent a dark future and grow into a more mature country. There are no eternal empires, eternal allies, or perpetual foes, but the survival interests of the nation are eternal and perpetual. They must follow their long-term national interests. The United States must respect humanity and all nations. Korea needs to adapt to its new position in the world. South Koreans must define themselves as a country distinct from the United States with distinct cultural roots. The North and South should strengthen their relations and contribute toward peace and the welfare of humanity. Neutrality first and unify later is the most sensible way of reconciling North and South. The Korean people must know that the North and the South have become divided and disparate because of the intervention of foreign powers. If we can work together to achieve neutrality on the Korean Peninsula, we can achieve peace in Northeast Asia.